Many Democrats think that because, Texas is a majority Latino state right now. Many Democrats believe that anytime you have Latinos in power, in the majority, whenever you have minorities in that make up a plurality or a majority, that somehow that means they are likely to get the vote. They could not be more wrong. And I can tell you this not from reading books or reading articles. During the canvassing time, during elections, I do canvass in Latino areas. For Bernie Sanders, I canvassed in Las Vegas in Latino communities, at Latino grocery stores, etc. During the last election, I went into, I don't remember what ward here in Houston, to go ahead and do that. Bridge MCP, thank you so kindly for your support. She says, I may not agree with all right people say, but I would stop in the rain. But I would stop in the rain to change a flat for them. I believe they're good people, as I hope they will about me. And you know what? Yes, the answer is yes. I've been to all kinds of areas where people eventually knew that I am this progressive dude, and we still break bread together. At my Starbucks, they all know who I am, and we break bread together. So continuing with the notion of Latino votes. Thank you very much, Bridge MCP. Continuing with the issue with the Latino vote. The Latino vote does not belong to Democrats. The black vote does not belong to Democrats. You have to earn the vote. Irrespective, if you want people to vote for you, earn the vote. Don't listen to those ivory tower guys in Washington who are telling you demographics is the answer and why these are the way to do things. And you know what? Today, MSNBC had an analyst, a Latino analyst, who knows exactly the reality of what we're talking about here. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Analysts say Democrats need to do even more if they want to win the 2024 election. The Cook Political Report highlights a study that analyzes Latino voter trends in key battleground states. Amy Walter writes, quote, it paints a worrisome picture for Democrats who may be hoping that increased Latino turnout in 2024 will cement their gains in key battleground states. For years, the working assumption among many campaign professionals was that Latino voters stayed home in midterm elections, but showed up in presidential elections. As such, a district or county with a significant Latino population would perform much better for Democrats in a presidential year than a midterm. But Republican candidates can make significant inroads with these voters, especially if they put a full court persuasion press on them, while Democrats only engage these voters at the very end of the campaign. Joining us now, Communications Director of the Libre Initiative, a national advocacy group for Latino Americans, Wadi Gaitan. Thank you so much for being on. So, what is the state of Latino support for Democrats? Are Democrats losing Latino voters?
Yes, they definitely are. I mean, the reality is I think many Democrats thought that voting demographic was baked in their favor. And what we're seeing is actually that more Latinos are actually identifying as independent, as swing voters. They're really willing to hear from both parties. It's important for Democrats to understand that this is a loss in the sense that before they could sort of count at these voters and these universes as sort of a get out the vote demographic, that towards the end of the election, they could just make that call and they would show up. But the reality is that is not the case. They're going to have to court the vote and they're going to have to work hard for it.
So sort of give me a snapshot of the mindset here of the Latino voters who are deciding that they're going to be independents or may not vote Democrat. In that mindset, what are the issues that are drawing them away from the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I would say it's a couple of issues. But one thing, when you talk to Latinos across the country, when you look at the polls, one of the biggest things is the economy. Inflation specifically has created a barrier towards the American dreams for Latinos. The American dream is more expensive for them. So they want to hear, what are the policies? What has the president done? And what is he going to promise to actually do when it comes to the topic of the economy? A lot of the polls also show that in general, Latinos view their trust towards Democrats as being the party that can actually deliver on the economy, that can deliver on issues like crime and like public safety, is lower than the trust that they have for Democrats. That doesn't mean that Republicans don't have barriers on their end, but these are also the barriers that Democrats are facing when it comes to courting that issue. Also, when it comes to immigration, Democrats have made the right promises, but have not been able to deliver on those promises for various reasons. But Latinos now view this topic as not necessarily the party that is going to be able to deliver. So they're not just looking for the promises, they're looking for results on the topic of immigration.
So, Wadi, obviously the Latino vote, not monolithic, different people, whether they're country of origin or where they live in the United States, changes their viewpoints. But let's just focus on one state in particular real quick. It's Florida, which has trended away from Democrats in recent cycles. This idea that the anti-socialism argument that Republicans are putting forth has been successful. Do you see anything that could push Florida back towards the blue column, or do you think it's pretty safely red right now?
I think it's safely read, but Republicans have made a lot of work in that area. So if Democrats genuinely want to win over Hispanics across Florida, they're going to have a strategic, targeted approach. Right now, you're talking about that there's the distinct backgrounds, right? Orlando specifically, the amount of Puerto Ricans who have moved there in the last 4 to 5 years from the island, even individuals from areas from New York who have moved to Orlando, have to understand that this demographic is completely different than the Cuban population, Venezuelan and Colombian, in Miami. Also, in areas of South Florida, there is a growing Mexican population in the areas like Homestead. So not only is it coming to these groups, showing up early, but it's making the specific case of why these different groups should vote for them. Something that Democrats really have to do is go beyond, again, that traditional 4-year voter that only votes in presidential races. There's approximately 1 million Latinos who are turning 18 every year. That's projected to be for the next 15 years. These are U.S.-born Latinos. These are people who can register to vote. The case has to be made to them early on why. These folks aren't necessarily registering, again, as Democrat or Republican. Their party affiliation isn't their identity. They're going as independent. The case has to be made. And Florida is very unique because Republicans have made a lot of headway, and they've had the results to show for it.
Okay, so as it turns out, it is imperative, if Democrats want the Latino vote, that they work for it. Get out of the ivory towers. Who makes you believe you know what the Latino vote is all about? Most of the times, they don't. Another thing here, Carl Cox nails it when Carl Cox says, Democrats in ivory tower will lose again and again if they continue to ignore both minority voters and progressive voters. Breed says, Egberto, how come they constantly speak of the issue yet do nothing? Because, again, it's easy to talk about something. It's hard to go into the community and work the community. When we went out there canvassing the community, people were, as you know, I did most of the Spanish speaking in these communities. And what you found is that people were, first of all, apprehensive. They didn't want to get into the electoral system because, again, they were distressed. They felt alienated, and also they were scared. Most families, a lot of Latino families in some of these poorer areas are mixed families, meaning half of them or some of them are American citizens, some of them are green card holders, and some of them are undocumented. Right? It's a combination thereof. And then there's another thing about Latinos as well. Latinos suffer the same disease that many minorities have in attempting to move up forward. They look at, some get ahead and they look at those behind them as a problem because they hate that people are viewing them through the eyes of the new immigrants. It's a very complex dynamic. In fact, I speak to a lot of folks. I go around my town, and I talked to some of the guys that are cutting the grass or whatever. And one of the guys who had a crew, but he was undocumented, he looked at me and he said, you know something, Egberto? You actually stopped by and talked to us and all of that. as we are speaking in Spanish. He said, the truth of the matter is the people that hurts us the most are some of our own Latinos who, number one, so I mean, there's a message from brother, the duck that quacks, that says, you mean Latinos support cages for their relatives? No, they don't support cages for their relatives, but they don't mind the relatives of others in cages. Many times that's what you find. And it's a very complex dynamic that is self-hate, not wanting to be judged by the lesser of you, meaning the ones who have just got here or the ones who are not yet fully successful. The dynamics is amazing, and the Republicans, as usual, know exactly how to expand or exploit that dynamic. But it goes a bit further. When you go to Spanish AM radio or Spanish radio, there's a lot of lies that you'd hear from the right wing on these radio stations. And I would be listening to it, and I'm like, how comes our democratic Latino folks who understand what's going on this radio aren't in their communities making mention of all this stuff? They don't. They're not doing the footwork. Texas would be a blue state if folks did the footwork. If folks did the footwork, we'll be a democratic state. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.